everyone, it's Katie Hempel here. Welcome to my channel. Today I invite you into a longer form conversation with me. I'm sure we'll also be weaving in some practice in the way I like to do for really having a fuller conversation on this theme that I am so lit up about right now, this cultivation of inner stillness. So inner stillness being an inner quiet, right? An inner quiet, an inner calm, an inner peace. Something that, let's be honest, for modern humans is just like a foreign concept, right? How many modern humans actually get like even a breath, let alone like 5 minutes of inner stillness? Right, and what we're going to do today is call upon a practice for whoever you are, whether you are someone who is looking for more like a 5 to 20 to 45-minute sort of goal of inner stillness, or maybe you're that person that's just, desperate for like one breath of inner calm, inner stillness. What we're going to do today is have a conversation about how this theme that's a really traditional theme, right? Inner stillness, inner calm, inner peace. This really being a very traditional aspect of a spiritual path. Whether that's yoga, meditation, whatever your embodiment path. Inner stillness, inner peace, inner calm, this grounded presence. Right? These are all very familiar to these sort of paths. And as they come with this familiarness, right, shall I dare to label it as a problem or a challenge that one may face? And I speak this because it's a challenge that I had to work through, and it took me years to figure out what was going on, and I don't want that to be your case. I want to give you the answers here in case this happens for you. But when we're dealing with a traditional aspect of spirituality, right, something that is old, that has been passed down generation after generation after generation, that comes with a lineage, often, what happens is this sort of practice becomes with a very strong, sturdy structure. So if we speak to something like inner stillness, inner peace, right? How do we cultivate that? Well, if you Google it or go look on the internet or go to the library and pick up a book, what you're going to do is find a whole lot of very structured, very kind of like written in the concrete, right? Written in the stone. Like, this is the way to do it. And most of the time, what that practice is going to tell you, depending on the lineage, is if you want to cultivate inner stillness, this is how you do it, right? Step one, you yourself become still. Sit cross-legged on the floor, spine upright, set a timer for 5 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour. Go into complete stillness. And in your complete stillness, what you're going to do is pull from a series of practices, right? Maybe it's focusing on the breath, maybe it's meditating on thoughts, maybe you have a mantra, but you have something for your mind to do, right? These busy, busy minds that we have. This practice is going to give your mind something to do as you yourself physically sit in stillness. And through that process, you're going to go through a process of cultivating inner stillness. So I bring this up for you today because, one, I want to open the conversation to, these are some powerful practices. When I first got into meditation, however many years ago it was, I was a graduate student at that point. I was doing neurotrauma research with stem cells and hydrogels, like really, really in the technical, very heady, sciencey researcher world. And my head was just overfilled. As a grad student, also trying to be an athlete, and I just had so much going on in my life. So, yeah, my head was busy, busy, busy. So, when I called upon this very structured sort of practice, it actually really helped. I'll go a step further to be like, this saved me, you guys. Like, this saved me. I found the inner clarity that I needed. I was able, through thought, meditation, and breath practice, and, occasionally I would do a mantra based practice. I was able to find those times where I could cultivate inner stillness. There's a but coming though, right? But what happened? Well, what happened was, because I only knew meditation and any sort of embodied spirituality through this very structured, masculine sort of practice, a sort of practice that, unskillfully, when we're in this space unskillfully, because we just don't know yet, right? We haven't been on the spiritual path yet, and for long enough yet, and we haven't learned the lessons that, I'm here to teach you today. I had to learn for myself the hard way. But when we find ourselves over in these like spaces that we can say are over-structured or may lend themselves to being over-structured, well, what happens is we can kind of get stuck there. We can get fixed there. Like, okay, this practice has served all these generations of people. This teacher is telling me that this practice is going to help me. If I do X, then Y will happen. Heck, in my case, I had actually already, received results from it. I had years of this practice really serving me. I got hooked on it. I got fixed there. I clung to it, this clinging to it. Then what happened was the world changed, my life changed, things became really unsettled, not okay. And in the space, I clung to it when in reality, this was no longer the practice that served. So in clinging to this inner stillness, what happened was that my inner world actually got really fiery. And I would become filled with anxiety. And I would sit in my stillness meditation and I would call upon the memory of how it had served. And I would call upon, the words written in stone, this practice will help you because of this. And I clung to that. And doing that, I was actually getting further and further away from being present with myself. Because if I had been present with myself, I would have been tuning into the fact that, like, girl, you gotta move. Do not be still. There is so much fiery and airy energy raging through my body right now. I had to move. So when it finally hit me in all the ways it did, what actually ended up serving was to move. So in those times when, the anxiety was just, it became chronic, it became crippling in many, many moments throughout the day, just totally consumed by fire. What did not serve was to sit in stillness. Now, is my story of one example of how it sometimes doesn't serve to call upon a stillness meditation practice to cultivate inner stillness. In my case, what I needed to do was get out on the trails and run and be out in nature and move my body. And as I was moving my body, I was moving this really intense energy in me. And once I could move that kind of free it, get it out of me, that's when that inner stillness would come. That's when that inner clarity would come. And so after months and months of this, forgetting about my traditional meditation practice, getting out on the trails, moving my body, moving this really intense, fiery energy in me, it's at that point, this was months, maybe even a year or two later, things take time. At this point is when I was able to sit back down, do the thing, become still, call upon the breath practice, start just watching my thoughts again, call upon a mantra, whatever the specific tool or technique. But from that physical stillness place, I was then once again served in this practice. So I bring you this story. Maybe you're someone like me who was going through what I will speak to as a traumatic time, right? This fire that was moving through me, right? We can label it in all the different ways: anxiety, trauma. I like to speak to the elemental nature of things, because it helps us get away from that labely space, which someone like me, as someone on the internet, isn't here to be with you in that space, right? If you want to come sit with me in a one-on-one space, then we can have those sort of conversations. But me, as someone here on the internet, what I want to do is help give you the words, the frameworks that are going to help you tune in directly, to feel indirectly to your experience. So I find working with elements, like that fire, like, oh yeah, I know what that feels like, or that airy quality, that very heady quality. So for me during these times, it was very much so this airy, fiery combo. If you can think about this, or maybe even feel into it, this firestorm, right? Where you have the fire raging from below and the air coming and fueling it, and you're just in this firestorm, right? That's kind of the world I found myself in those years. And during that time, forcing myself to sit in stillness, that wasn't gonna help me. That just, there was more space then for that fire to rage through, which was kind of my experience. And maybe that resonates with some sort of experience in your world. Maybe there's some sort of flavor that with aligned with that. Maybe you're like, oh yeah, I totally get that. That's not the only state. It's not the only state that a stillness meditation might not serve. And I'm not going to go through and list all the different reasons why stillness meditation practice may not serve, but what I am going to do is invite you to be present and aware in your own practice. And how I want to do that is twofold. So let's do this. One, let's start to enter in a sort of stillness meditation practice. We're just going to ease into it, move gently into it. And as we do, what I really want you to do is hold a space of awareness. What is actually going on in my world as Katie cues this? Is this practice really helping to ground me and calm me and bring peace and clarity? And if so, that's amazing, because it absolutely has the power to do it. And I teach it because it can be a powerful practice. And also, can you hold the awareness of knowing, of being able to say whoa, actually, this isn't creating calm. This isn't creating peace. This is creating space for something to stir up, right? Either or, whole spectrum, right? It's usually our practices aren't black or white, A or B. Usually there's a whole spectrum, a whole playground of experiences that could unfold. So just holding space, like what's here as you go into your own stillness meditation practice. What is here? So practice with me. An invitation to practice with me here. I'm seated. I invite you to be seated as well. I'm seated so that my sits bones are in connection with the chair. My feet are on the floor. Maybe you find your way into a cross-legged position. Heck, maybe you even find full lotus. I don't care so much how you're seated. I do invite you to have that upright spine if that works for you. If there's any sort of pain in your spine or elsewhere in your body for you seated up, feel free to have some back support or lay down if needed. Finding your way to a seated upright position if that works. If not, modify. From this space, let's connect with our breath. So connecting into your breath, and invite you to find that breath down in your body. So we can find our breath up in our heads, like breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. In this practice, I don't invite you to do that. I invite you to find your breath down in your body. So feeling into the three-dimensional expansion of your ribs as you inhale, and then exhaling, just letting go of your breath. Inhaling again, maybe you stay up in your rib cage, or maybe you bring some awareness all the way down into your abdomen. Slow, full breath, letting yourself be filled with breath, and then exhaling, letting that breath go. With that exhale, maybe bringing in an invitation to help, shed anything that's taking up space here in your consciousness that doesn't need to be here. Continuing these slow, full, deep breaths. Inhaling, being filled. Allowing yourself to be filled. This is an ease-filled breath. Exhaling, letting it go. As you continue to take these breaths, I invite you to bring some of your attention into that connection that is your seat, in connection with the physical surface holding you here. So for me, I'm feeling into my sits bones in connection with the chair. Maybe it's supportive to find your feet in connection with the floor. Breathing deep down into your body as you connect to the ground beneath you. Deep breaths all the way down. These are nice grounding breaths. We're going to start this practice by really grounding, so we're getting ourselves out of that mental activity. So we're bringing ourselves deep, deep down into self. From this space, I invite you to find your way, maybe scanning self from your head, down through your neck, through your chest, down through your belly, maybe all the way down through your root. Just like a nice light scan. We're scanning for any area that really feels still, feels peaceful. So for me, that's often not up in my head. Oftentimes my head is very busy, busy, busy. But by breathing down into self, so maybe it's in your heart, maybe it's in your lungs, like in your breath. Maybe it's down in your solar plexus. Maybe it's all the way down in your root in connection to the earth beneath you. Taking a moment to scan, is there an area in self where you already can sense into that stillness? So breathing into that stillness. By bringing your full attention into that stillness, it's almost like you can start to expand that stillness. So even if it's the tiniest seed of stillness within, calling upon your breath to bring your conscious attention to this space, can you start to expand that stillness within? Maybe it only expands just like the smallest amount. Or maybe with each breath, that seed of stillness grows and grows and grows and grows. Maybe you start to get some imagery, or maybe it helps to call in some imagery. When we speak to stillness, I like to think of crystal clear waters of a mountain lake, or those cool, dark waters of a lake in the forest, perfectly still, just like glass on the surface, perfectly still. So maybe these waters help to grow this inner stillness, these crystal clear waters. So an invitation to stay with this practice. I'm just going to leave us here for another few breaths. We're going to start to shift. So if you want to stay here longer, feel free to press pause. Just stay with that stillness within. Maybe that's feeling really nurturing right now and you just want to stay here. So feel free to press pause. Maybe you want to join us again later. I want to speak again to that awareness. As I guide you to finding stillness within, as I guide you into finding physical stillness, upright, alert, aware, but still, physically still. Is there, readily available for you this stillness within? Or is there something else that happened for you today? Maybe it was really difficult to find stillness. Maybe you found yourself really working towards stillness, like, yeah, it's here, it's here, it's here, but I just can't get to it. Or maybe you had an experience like I used to, where you went within, and by becoming still, turning within, things got really crunchy. Maybe you felt really anxious, really fiery. Awareness really being the most powerful part of your spiritual practice that you can cultivate. Because when you're aware, when you are truly conscious of what is going on in your lived, breathed, embodied experience, then you have the power to start to work with it. However, if you're just blindly guiding or following along to someone's guided practice and they're telling you, oh, if I breathe in this way, or use this mantra, it will cultivate a certain state. If you're clinging to that outcome and you're not able to be aware of what's actually unfolding, I can tell you from where I stand that this is entirely missing the point of the spiritual journey. This is entirely missing the point of the embodiment practice. Because what the practice is cultivating awareness and cultivating skill. What practices actually serve you? What practices actually support you, nurture you, heal you, transform you in a way that you want to be transformed? This is how we become skillful This is how we become empowered. This is how we take ourselves off of all those paths that is so much of life right now that is just being caught up in all the things we're told to do so that we can be a certain way. Right? The spiritual path for many people, because of the ways that a lot of people teach it and the ways that a lot of people find themselves on it, is just the same old story that has gotten us to where we are today. That is taking away your own power and giving it to someone else because someone else has the answers or the practices that they tell you are going to help you. And yeah, maybe they will, but maybe they won't. And we can't know unless we're holding that awareness piece. Step 1 on your spiritual journey: cultivate awareness. What is alive within? As Katie guides me in this practice, or as any teacher guides you in any sort of practice, and to whatever degree, this may help you, or me telling you this will help you, just holding awareness. Is this actually going to help me? Is this actually helping me in the way that this teacher is telling me it should? Or is something else happening? In which case, discernment really comes online. Do I need to stop? Do I need to pivot? Do I need to find a new teacher entirely? What a fun playground. If you ever thought the spiritual journey was like, oh, I just need to follow these teachings and I will get to where I need to be, I don't think that's what we're here doing in this day and age. It's certainly not what I'm teaching. What I'm teaching over here is empowerment. And it has to be this way from the way I see it, right? We have to be empowered. We have to be discerning. We have to be aware of what is true for each of ourselves. This has to be the case because each of us humans, we're all so different. I've spent, I don't know how many years at this point, right? Studying the human body, the human being from all the different perspectives that I can, right? Starting in biology, physiology, pathophysiology. I spent time in stem cell science. I spent time in epigenetics, right? So this very physiological perspective, right? And what it showed me is the extreme complexity of what it means to be a human being. From the space, I went over into the world of nutrition and health sciences and tried to make sense of that whole mess of things over there. And what I was shown very clearly is, wow, us humans are complex, and what works for me may not actually serve you. What works for me may work for you if you are able to have the awareness to tweak it just the right amount. And it's the same thing here on the spiritual path. We are all wired differently to different degrees, and the way we are wired changes as we go through life. So we have to cultivate that awareness. We have to be aware. When somebody tells me something is going to help me, does it? Does it actually create the result that you desire? Is it helping you? Is it supporting you? Is it serving you? Or is it actually hurting you? Any embodiment practice, any meditation practice, any spiritual practice, it can support you. It can serve you. There are many, many, many practices that are so powerful, and they can actually harm you when used in the wrong context, when used at the wrong time. This isn't to scare you at all. This is to empower you so that when you show up for whatever practice you're at, you have that awareness, that ability to be like, yeah, this is really helping me, so I'm going to keep doing this. Heck, I'm going to do this more because this is really helping me. or no, this isn't helping me. I don't like this result that's being created, so I need to pivot. I need to step away, stop entirely. We all on the same page here at this point? I want to wrap up today by bringing us back to our stillness theme. Cultivating inner stillness. And, this practice really being the one that fires me up for this whole conversation we've had today, because I have had such a positive experience with it, and I've had such a negative experience with forcing myself to be physically still so that I could cultivate inner stillness. Right? We have to be able to separate the two. Physical stillness, stillness in like making sure there's no sound externally, right? The cessation of noise, of movement, of stimuli from the outside does not equate with internal stillness. One can support the other, or one can aggravate the other. So this subject really firing me up, again, because I've had both experiences. And because I've had both experiences, I want to bring you the space where you can really explore, And with that, that's, as I'm showing up here on YouTube and, Instagram, the other places you can find me in, that's what we're doing this season. Now, I'm also guiding a group of people through a deeper dive into this topic in my Winter Stillness Speaks event. This is an event where in this space, what I have for you is both sides of what I teach. The structured, focused, yes, I am going to give you a specific practice with a structure, with a process to follow. It is a physical stillness practice. And in that space, we're going to start small, for a minute, or heck, if that's too big, for a breath. But starting with a minute, can you sit fully in physical stillness? As you do, what unfolds within? At the end of that minute, do you now have the discernment to know? Do you expand that minute to 5 minutes? Do you shorten that minute? Do you pivot entirely? Cultivating that discernment, really one thing we're going to be focused on inside of this program. If you end up building a full stillness practice at the end of all of it, that's amazing. That's certainly part of what I'm holding space for here. It's also not the most important thing here, right? There's all the more important things underneath, and that's what we're really working on in this space. So one, I have that structured, very masculine practice for you. But as the way I do things, we also have what I call a playground of embodiment practice, meditation experience. These are practices where I just get inspired to create, to guide you in ways that, some of them might be more masculine practices. Some of them are sure to be more feminine, kind of fun, creative practices. Knowing that today this practice was kind of right in the middle. Right, I guided you down into a deep grounding practice, and then from there we called in stillness, but we also got a little fun, called in some water, some alpine lakes. Weaving practices together in that way are my favorite way to work in this space. So if that seems true to you, come find me and a beautiful group of souls journeying in this winter's program, Stillness Speaks. If that sings to you, I look forward to seeing you there. If this video has spoken to you in any way, which since we're here like 40 minutes in and you're still listening, I'm going to trust that it has in some way. So if you haven't yet, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button so that we can really help cultivate the community here. Make sure on my newsletter, Instagram, all the places that I'm coming to you today. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to catching you in whatever the next space is that we find ourselves in.